the operating system, when it is handling the multiple process, how the resources are shared among the various processes. So for which we have seen the different kernel objects. One of that was semaphore, and the next is mutex. So we were talking about the mutex. So if you remember the state diagram which I have shown, when to share the resource, the mutex, it is using some sort of a lock and unlock, which means the process which holds the key, it is locking, it is using the critical section, and after it releases, it will unlock so that the other process can make use of the same. Yeah. So here, this is an RTX code, a simple code which is written to understand how the mutex can be used. So to begin with, here we have a main program in which we are using system initialization with the priority as 10, the highest, and we are using the UART initialization function. So this is the initialization function in which you enable the particular pings of the TXT and RXT for the UART and set the baud rate and make sure that what is the data format you send it through the FIFO control registers and the line control registers, and also you need to set the baud rate, you have to enable the DLAB bit, and then once you load it in the DLL and DLM, you disable the bit. That is a common routine which we have in all our code where we use the UART. Coming to the initialization function, yeah. So here we have two tasks, task 1 and task 2. So once you create the task, please note that both the tasks are given with the same priority here. And once you create the task, you delete this function. Also, you can note here there is a mutex initialization with the name of mutex1. Okay, once so initialize this, it will create a particular memory and other related information for the mutex. Now we have a two tasks. Okay, so in task 1, you can see here we have a while loop. You send a message, task 1 calling F1. So we call some function here. Okay, it is calling. So we just put the message. There's nothing more over here. You just call put the message and call this function. So this is what we have it in the task 1. Okay. So it is calling function 1. So both are given with the same priority. So obviously to begin with, it will pick task 1 and start executing, wherein you just send the message and call the function 1. So in function 1, you have the mute. So as I have shown the RTX functions similar to your semaphore, whenever you opt for the mutex, you just put the mute wait. So whenever this function is executed, it checks whether the availability of the key or the mutex, and this is waiting for a finite duration time. This is the timeout period which is defined, and if the mutex is available, it will enter into the critical section. Okay, since we have started with the task 1, definitely it should probably, if the other process was already entered into the critical section, then this cannot. Okay, but here hoping that the key is available and it will enter into the critical section, and it will increment this global variable. We have defined these variables. You can see here the I and the M underscore variable, and you have set some buffer size, the array size for the message which you are going to display. Okay, so this is our global variable, and now we just put a message saying that what is the current, what is the value at present. This is a variable which we are using in both the tasks. So you just put a message saying that what is the value of this global variable. So this is the piece of code for sending the message. So this maybe you are familiar with. Check till the end of the null character and status register is set. You just send the characters in the transmit register, hold register for display. Yeah. Now, once you put this message, you can now you are in this particular function. It's randomly it's given. Now F1 is calling F2. There is one more function. So this message is sent. F1 is calling F2 and send this message and call the F2. Call the F2. So please remember that in task 1 we are calling function 1 and function 1 is calling F2. In function 2, if you see here, it is you just put the wait function, wait for the mutex, but this is not at released, okay. So if it is not released, it will come back and release this mutex. So if this is released, then it will enter into the critical section, and it was waiting for the mutex. If it is released, immediately it will acquire that, and the global variable can be assigned with some values. So please note that in the function 1 we are incrementing, but here you're putting some constant value. Okay. Then what is the value? What we just want to make sure that how this global variable is used with the functions. So this is our common resource, how this resource is shared. So now we print this message, and that's it. And once you are done it, you release it. Okay. Now your task 2, if you look at the task 2, here task 2 is calling function 2. Okay, task 2 is calling function 2. So please note that task 1 is calling function 1 and function 1 is calling function 2. But here in task 2, you call the function 2 and this message is displayed. You call the function 2. Okay, you call the function 2. So whenever you try to call the function 2, make sure that you just call this function 2, and function 2, it is waiting for this one, and so we want to ensure that this is the common function which is used by both the tasks, how it is going to get handled based on the speed of execution, how they get to know each other, and also based on the execution of the two tasks, because both are given with the same priority. Both cannot acquire the same simultaneously, because once one of the process, if it is locking it till it is released, other cannot use it. Okay, this is just a simple program given how this global variable is made to change during the task execution. Okay. So we are not using anything else over here, just making use of this global variable. Just to add a little complexity, we've used, because otherwise the function 1 is using and function 2 is used by the task 2, but here just to know that how there is a nested function call can execute, for which there's an additional function added, so that F1 is calling F2. Okay, yeah. So this is the program for the mutex. Please try to understand. Here we will be using a common variable which is part of the function, and you call this function in the particular process. Okay.
Ma'am, I have one doubt.
Yeah, tell.
Ma'am, in the function OS mute wait, we specify the timeout period, right? And 0xFF signifies that the timeout period is indefinite.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So what if I declare timeout period as 2 ticks or 3 ticks?
Yeah, you can. So this is the maximum period it is given.
So ma'am,
You
if
can
the timeout period expires, then the process will move on to the critical section.
see here the wait function, how long it can wait. Otherwise, it will become infinite, right? Just to avoid
Yes.
in our code, just to avoid that scenario in the code, because we want to make sure it should be normal. If there is a timeout period is defined, you can give 000f any value. So it will wait for that much amount of time, and then it will come out of it. If the mutex is not available, it cannot enter into the critical section.
That's what I'm saying, ma'am. Like the timeout period specifies that the function should uh, wait for that amount of time to acquire the mutex.
Right.
And ma'am, if it doesn't acquire the mutex, then like does the function
It cannot.
moves on to the critical?
It cannot continue with the execution, because it is waiting for that, right?
So ma'am, then what is the significance of timeout period? I didn't get it.
See, whenever I give a wait function, it is looking, say, what is the main objective here? Objective here is to, there should not be any conflict in handling the resource. Correct. So both cannot, say if I am writing something in the variable, both cannot write simultaneously. We need to handle it in a very smooth way.
That is okay, ma'am. My question is like if I specify 0xFF, the indefinite timeout period, and if I specify the 2 ticks or 4 ticks amount of timeout period, what will
Fine.
be the difference in behavior?
So difference would be, it will just wait for that much amount of time. If it is not released, you are giving enough time to do some processing in the other task, and it can release. That is what we are trying to do here. If you give too short time, then you may not get the release, and it will become something like, supposing if I don't give any time for release, then what happens? This particular process is waiting for the mutex for a short amount of time, and it will go to the suspend. Are you getting it?
Okay, ma'am. So from there on, it will remain in suspend only.
Yeah. It may not get a chance. Now what we are trying to do, at least it should get a chance, so that give some processing time for the other process so that it can release it.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Ma'am, I also have a doubt.
Yeah.
Can you show me the F1 function definition?
F1 function definition. What do you mean by definition?
Yeah, there, that the body of that function.
Yeah.
A few lines down, ma'am. So here, yes, when we start calling F2 in that function, so on line 40, we acquire the mutex and we tell it to wait as long as it takes, right?
Yes.
And on 59, we call F2, and the first line of F2 is that again, we are telling it we need the mutex and you wait as long as it's required, right?
See, this is what the function F1, this you mean, right?
Right.
The highlighted one.
Yes.
Or this one.
No, I'm saying that when we call the F function 2, F2,
in
there also we are.
In F1.
No, matlab the first line of function 2, once F2 starts executing, the first line of that is also the same command that wait for mutex 1 for as long as you take, right?
Correct.
But in F1 itself, we have not yet released the mutex.
Correct. That's what I'm
calling F2. Yes, yes.
Listen.
I got that.
You call this function, but this is not released.
Right. So my question is, wouldn't it hang?
Right. You listen. Now what happens is, supposing I call this function F2 from F1. F1 was called by the process 1. Fine. Now process 1 is calling F1 and F1 is calling F2. Let us imagine that process 2 is also calling F2.
Yes.
Correct. So we have to make sure that there is no conflict. Consider that F1, the process 1 is already in the critical section through F1.
Okay. Yeah, so far, yes.
Yeah. So now you call this F2. Suppose in the process 2 also calling F2, and if they try to call, but look at the first statement, is waiting for this. So since this is not yet released by the process 1, it both cannot enter.
Yes, ma'am. So that is the doubt. It will hang, right? Because nobody is releasing the mutex.
No. Now what happens? It is waiting for that. So since it is waiting for it, it will go to that some blocked state.
Okay.
Okay. So since it is going to the blocked state, from wherever it got halt, it will come back here and execute this.
Ma'am, it is the task that gets into the block state, right? Not the function, right?
Not the function, but again it will, through that process only it will execute this. It will wait until this is released by the process 1. See, these are
so once we, after that block state is done and we start execution again, it will restart the function execution, function 1 execution. Is that what you're trying to say?
It will not restart the whole from, see, it is a context switching, right? From wherever it has halt, From there only it will continue with the execution. From where? Because it will save some of its relevant information. There's no point in repeating the whole. From which instruction it has halt. From there it will continue the execution. It could be anywhere.
Ma'am, you are not able to understand the problem here. Ma'am, see, at line 40, the function acquired the mutex. Okay. Let us suppose no other, there is only one task. So let us suppose there is only one task. At line 40, the OS at acquired mutex. At line 59, it is again trying to, at line 59, it is calling F2, and F2 is again trying to acquire the mutex. So it's a kind of deadlock kind of thing.
That's what I would like to say. Say, you try to avoid the deadlock here.
How can we avoid this, ma'am? Until unless F2 is executed, the line 60 won't get executed, right?
Which one?
It will.
See, F2 is calling here.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a sequential execution, right?
Yes,
sequential execution. So you try to call this. Consider anything. Supposing if the task 2 has started initially, assuming the task 2 started, you start with the task 2 and call this function, and if that is entered the critical section, and after it finishes, it will release this. It could be the scenario also.
Ma'am, you just leave the task 2 for a second and you just see what is the point here.
Fine.
In function F1,
task 1 I have started. So function 1 has started with the calling function 1, and you call this function 2.
F2 again is trying to acquire the mutex. It will not get the mutex. It will get into the suspend state, and from there it can't come back. It
can't come back, provided it will go to the what is called as a suspended state. As soon as this goes to the suspended state, immediately the other task which is in the loop, suppose task 2, both are having the same priority, it starts execution, right?
Yes, ma'am, but task 2, it will call function 2, and then again the first line tells it to wait for the mutex, which was never released. So it should hang, right?
It won't hang because it will wait for the infinite amount of time. Then, one second. Yeah, it will start with, here you have a wait for the mutex, right? So mutex was not released by the task 1. That's what you mean here. So it is not able to call the function F2.
Yes, ma'am. F1 is also waiting for the mutex, and the task 2 is also waiting for the mutex.
Yeah, but the F1 is already in the critical section, right?
Ma'am, let us assume that after crossing the critical section, it is trying to execute the F2 function. F2 is called in F1, right? So, ma'am, let us assume that F1 is in.
Point. Yes, you mean to say until and unless this is returning, it cannot come to this point. That is what you mean to say, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I got the point. But it is happening here. Maybe it is when I executed it is able to vary the changes. I mean, both the global variable is handled efficiently. That I could see. I need to find out what could be the reason. Because both are given with the same. I got your point. You mean here saying that until and unless this is complete, you cannot come to this, right? Because it is not released. What and moreover, I cannot have something like a mutex release function in the beginning itself. That is not possible over here. So what we have done here, some sort of a function here, yeah, one second there. Function 1 and function 2, fine. Assuming There is a delay wait function is given, it will go to blocked. I got the point, but there is a global variable is handled. The reason I need to find out, because maybe it could be due to the speed at which it is executing, but the global variable is handled by both the process, but it is not going to the deadlock state when I run it.
Probably, ma'am, 59 and 60 lines should be interchanged.
No, the same code was executing. We'll see. I'll interchange and run, and let me give you the difference. Okay. So what could be the changes?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll look into this. I'll make it red. Yeah, in this running code, I cannot choose. I remember it. I'll run that by interchanging, and I'll see what is the changes can happen. Okay. I got your point, but it is executing.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. We were discussing some theory. Theory behind the mutex. So let us continue with the same. Yeah. So this is the simple state diagram for the mutex. This is called as a recursive mutex. What you can do here is, it's a recursive. You can lock it, but you can acquire multiple times. The same process can acquire it multiple times, okay, and release it. Okay. So you just make a note of that. How many times I am acquiring the key. Okay. The same process can that is called as a recursive mutex. Okay. It becomes a recursive. So after you make use of it, when you release, it becomes unlocked and it will come back to the initial. Yeah, this is the sequence of code, how the mutex using semaphores. So there will be a sem wait. So whenever you make use of a wait function, it will decrement, and if the key is available, it can enter into the critical section, and after you make use, you release it. Okay. So the requirement that more than one process be allowed in its critical section at a time can be handled by simply initializing a semaphore to a specified value. Okay. So there will be something like a S count, which we use in the recursive semaphore, and you can interpret that as if this S count value is greater than 0, okay, which means the number of processes that can execute sem wait without suspension, means it should be a positive value. Okay, so this value should be positive. If it is positive, which means you can execute the sem wait. Okay, such a situation will allow semaphores to support synchronization as well as the mutual exclusion. If this count is less than zero, then the number of processes suspended in the ST. If it is less than that, means if it is becomes -1, -2, that are so many processes are in the suspended queue. Yeah, so this is a simple scenario. We have some three process ABC, how they can make use of the this mutex. So through the SEMC. So there is a queue. This is a queue for the semaphore, and assuming the initial value of the semaphore is 1, consider that process A will initiate the sem wait, means a lock. So since it was 1 initially, it can enter into the critical section. So the process A will enter into the critical section. Meanwhile, the next clock tick, let us say the process B initiates some wait, then this becomes -1, and it is, since the key is not available, it will be in the queue waiting for the semaphore. And the next, the process C is initiating the sem wait, so again it's not available, it is waiting in the queue. So assume that at this stage, the next time, this is the block for the semaphore, and this is your normal section and the critical section. Critical section in this sense, waiting, it needs some resources common among the process. So when it releases this, then it will become -1, and the process B can try to make use of it, and by the time it will become 0 and then 1. So it will initiate the sem signal and then the next process in the queue. Okay. So here it's a simple sequential operation which is shown how different process can handle the, how the process are stored in the queue. Okay, and they are protected by the semaphore. So your normal execution can proceed in parallel, but your critical regions are serialized. Okay, so you can continue with the normal execution provided you don't need any particular common resource. So there are certain approaches to handle the mutual exclusion. There's something like a Dekker's algorithm. This may not be an efficient algorithm, but still let us try to understand the theory behind it. Okay. So in this algorithm, you initiate or a global memory location labeled as turn. You assign a global memory. So a process wishing to execute its critical section first check the contents of the turn. It checks the content of the turn. The value of turn should be the as, suppose if it is equal to process 1. Okay, means okay, it is my turn to make use of the critical section. Okay, if the value of the turn is equal to the particular process, then the process may be proceed to its critical section. If not, it is forced to wait. It is forced to wait. It cannot acquire the critical section. So the waiting process will repeatedly reads the value of turn until it is allowed to enter into the critical section. It keeps on reading the value of turn. Okay, so this is known as busy waiting. It's something like you must have seen in your simple the microprocessor code. For example, how you handle the resource. Suppose say ADC. In ADC, you give some signals a start of conversion. Then you keep waiting for end of conversion. So how you can handle the same, exactly in a similar manner, this is handled. Okay, so it is, you give some word and check whether it is done. I mean, that is a way in which you do it, or else once the work is done by the other process, it can say that okay, I'm done. It can interrupt. Okay, so this is how you can handle. I mean, how you handle it. The concept is similar. So in this algorithm, there is a variable called turn, and if the name, the turn value should be equivalent to your the process. If it is true, then only you proceed to make use of the resource and you can enter into the critical section. If not, it has to keep checking whether whether my turn will come or not. Okay. So there are different attempts to see how it can handle and what are the problems in the particular sequential, the way in which you write the code. There are different attempts are made in this algorithm. Say you have example having two process. There are two process. So this, in the first attempt, you just check. This is process 0 and process 1. Process 0 and process 1. So you check whether the turn is equal to your number. Okay. If it is true, then you can enter into the critical section, and then once you are done, set it to 1. Okay. So assuming it's a multitasking or parallel processing, you just process 1 is checking whether its turn. If it is already in the critical section by the process 0, it cannot enter into the critical section. But if it is 1, then it can enter into the critical section. Once it finishes, it makes the turn is equal to 0. But there are some certain problems, and they have seen in this particular approach. It stores the name of the process that may enter in its critical section. Okay. So when we need state information about both the process, okay, so each process should have its own key to the critical section, so that if one fails, other can still access the critical section. So in this case, suppose a process fails, other process cannot enter into the critical section. That could be the problem with the this particular way in which you give the process execution. This is the second attempt. Okay. Here they have used additional variable, something like a Boolean vector. A flag is used, which is used as a key. And in this case, you just check while the flag 1. You check for that particular Boolean vector. So if it is 1, then you cannot do anything. If it is true, flag 0. So you have for each process there is a flag. So flag 0 for process 0, flag 1 for process 1. Okay. So if flag 1 is true, then you cannot, which means the other process in the critical section. it is a vice versa for both. Okay, so once if it is available, then you can enter into the critical section and make it false before you come out of the execution. But in this, if one process fails inside its critical section, including the flag setting code controlling the critical section, then the other process is blocked. And if process fails outside its critical section, then the other process is not blocked. Suppose if it is outside the critical section, it won't block. That is the advantage. But there are certain problems. The problems could be P0 executes the while statement and finds flag 1 set to false. Similarly, P1 executes the while statement and finds flag 0 set to false. Okay. And P0 sets flag 0 to true and enter its critical section. That can happen. So when you begin with, this can happen. And suppose this is started, it sets flag 1 to true and enters its critical section. Because both processes are now in the critical section, that is something like a deadlock can happen. Okay. So this could be a problem in this particular way in which you write the code. There is a third attempt. It's a different version was given in the algorithm. Here, so please note the difference. Here you begin with check. Here, in the beginning itself, you make true and check for the other flag. Check for the other flag. So make yourself true and check. If that is true, then you cannot enter into the critical section. Okay, flag 1 is okay. Should be so. If it is not, then you can go to the critical section and once you are done, you make it false. Similarly for the process. Okay. So once P0 has set flag 0 to true, P1 cannot enter its critical section until P0 has entered and left its critical section. So that is the improvement. But the problem could be both processes set their flags to true before either has executed the while statement, then each will think that the other has entered its critical section. This again causes the deadlock. Okay, this can happen because before they enter into the while loop, so this is made also true, this is also true. So then you just check whether the flag 1, so that can be a problem in this particular situation. Then finally, a improved code is given. It's a improvised program. Here the same thing. You can check here. You start with the flag 0 true, but in the while loop, you make sure that this is, if this is true, then it will continue, and you make flag 0 false and flag 0 true, and then you go to the critical section, and once you enter the critical section, then you release it, then you make it false. So here this is maybe the sequence of operation is given in the book, you can just go through it. Here this may not go to the deadlock situation, because both are trying to make themselves set the flag and try to enter the critical section, but this based on the speed of execution. So in the sequence, neither process could enter the critical section. Okay, this may be due to the relative speed of the two processes, which break the cycle and allow one enter the critical section. So this is called as a live lock. Okay, so the speed of operation makes sense here. So particular process, if it is executing, I mean, if there are based on the code, the instruction what you have given, it can immediately acquire the critical the resource and try to acquire it. Okay, so it may not lead with a deadlock, but this is called as a live lock because they both try to acquire the resource with the pace in which they execute. So with live lock, there are possible sequence of execution that succeed, but it also possible that one or more execution sequence in which no process ever enters its critical section. That can also happen. So there is something like a correct solution is given for this algorithm, a correct solution. When P0 enters the critical section, it sets its flag, please note, sets its flag to true. Then checks the flag of P1, If it is false, immediately it will enter the critical section. Otherwise, P0 consults turn. There is another additional information is used here. If it finds that turn is also 0, okay, then it knows that it is its turn to insist and periodically checks the P1's flag. P1 at some point of note that it is its turn to defer and sets flag false, allowing P0 to proceed. Okay. So after P0 has used its critical section, it sets its flag to false. Okay, after P0 and make the other process free to use the critical section and sets turn to 1 to transfer the rights to the other process. Here in all the situation we have given for a simple understanding with the two processes. Please refer the code which is given in the book. I did not copy in the slide. So the sequence of that, the correct solution sequence is given in the book William Stallings. Please refer it. So this is how you need to write the code to handle the mutex in the operating systems. Okay. Yeah, any clarifications? Please go through the code which is given in the book.
No doubts, ma'am.
Okay, there is another algorithm, which is Peterson's algorithm. Here there is a flag and turn. So the flag indicates the position of each process with respect to mutual exclusion. And the turn, which resolves, it's a variable, resolves the simultaneity conflicts. So both try to acquire that can be resolved. So there's an additional. So in this particular algorithm, anyway, I have not shown the code over here. It's a simple code. The Decker's algorithm is a bit complex. It is quite lengthy, but the Peterson algorithm is very short, easy to understand. That can be referred. So in this algorithm, consider P0 has set flag 0 to true. Suppose in such a case, P1 cannot enter its critical section. P1 cannot enter its critical. Suppose P1 is already in the critical section, then flag 1 is true. In such a case, P0 is blocked from entering into the critical section. Okay. In that way, the mutual blocking is prevented. That way, the mutual blocking is, I mean, you can have it in vice versa. Suppose P1 has set flag 1 2, so the same way you can give the explanation. Suppose P0 has blocked in its while loop, then flag 1 is true and turn is equal to 1. Okay. So P0 can enter its critical when either flag 1 is false, means it will see to that. So when either flag 1 becomes false or turn is equal to 0. Okay. Either of these conditions are checked. If anyone is in your side, then only you can enter into the critical section. So the complexity of giving the code in the Dekker's algorithm is simplified here through the Peterson, but it looks similar almost, but with the simplified version of the code. Okay. So they have used this variable to handle the critical section. Please note that the flag is which indicates the position of the process, and the turn can be used to resolve the simultaneity conflicts, because both try to acquire it simultaneously. So this is your program for Peterson algorithm. You have in the main, say make it both false. Okay. Use these two process, and you have process P1 and these are the declarations. Okay. Flag 2 and the flag 1. I don't think, yeah, we have to have flag 1 as well. And you have process 0, you while 1 set the flag to true and turn is equal to 1. You yourself make it. But while flag 1 and turn, then you do nothing. Okay. If not, you can enter into the critical section. Once you finish, make it false. So this is inside the while loop. And in the process 1, same way, you have a flag 1 to true, turn is equal to 0, and you check for the other process. Check for the other process. If it's already in the critical section, you do nothing. If not, you can enter into the critical section and continue. So here you have to have a flag 1. Yeah, this flag 1 and flag. Those are the variables which are declared. Okay, flag 0 and flag 1. And we have to declare this variables. Yeah, this is your Peterson algorithm given in a simple way. This producer consumer problem. I just know the theory, and maybe the other things I'll explain in the next class. There is something like a producer consumer problem. This is again to understand how the various process can handle the resources. there is something like you have a master and the slave. In a similar way, I mean, this is to handle the communication. Say, in any multitasking, you need to know how the resources are shared and how you give the signal or how you communicate each other. Okay, maybe some communication should be known among the process, or means they are aware of each other, and that could be the process they are unaware of each other. Maybe during the operations they come to know each other. So there are different situations through which you can execute the process. So here there is something like a producer and the consumer. So the producer is the one which will initiate the, I mean, it will give the items, whatever you call it here, and the consumer will acquire it. Okay, so in the while one loop, you can see that there is a variable, it is producing the item and loaded, and you increment the values, that is input. You put the input. Okay, so you have it in the buffer. The consumer, you just check whether I'm able to get the value. If it is available, then you get the value and load it in a variable W and send it. You output. Okay, so this is the one which is producing it, and this is the one which is sending it. Okay, this is producer consumer. Maybe more theory behind this we will be able to explain in the, I'll continue in the next class. Any other clarifications on the algorithm which I have discussed? Probably you can go through the book once. I want to tell you regarding the syllabus for the exams. So I think we have midterm exams from 15th onwards. Let me open can you see the course plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So we have done so much. You see the book, you get to know the portion. Almost 3/4 of the syllabus is done. Yeah. We will keep the syllabus up to the uniprocessor, I mean up to, yeah, 21. Maybe it is quite simple, up to 21. That is RTX changing the priority.
So semaphores will not be there?
No. Inter-process communication and all will not have it for the midterm. Okay. So because I don't want to give so many things. So from the beginning, please refer the book. The stallings as well as the code which I have shared, and try to understand and analyze the code program given in RTX and the RTX functions. Maybe I'll upload the RTX manual to understand the different functions used in the RTX. And you need to go through about the ARM Cortex, the architecture basics. Maybe the book also I have uploaded, I guess. If not, I'll load it. Maybe those things are given in the slides, but you need to refer the book for the theory to understand more. Okay. So from the beginning, the fundamental concepts and the process structures, data structures, RTX, the Cortex architecture, and LPC 1768, its features, and UART, and the LPC 1768, again the hardware timers. Maybe this is the one which, yeah, I've modified and I've uploaded, I guess. And the different scheduling which are used in the RTX, round robin, cooperative, preemptive, and uniprocessor scheduling in the different types of scheduling which I have discussed. So we shall keep it up to 21. Okay. So how you switch between the process by changing the priority. Okay. So inter-process communication will not keep it. Then maybe after the midterm, we'll discuss on the free RTOS. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Any doubts in the any topics till 21? Any clarifications? If you've got any doubts, you please ask.
Ma'am, before we did scheduling, at one point we were talking about debugging and JTAG, right?
Yeah.
Will that also be included?
Yes, it is there. It is there.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. JTAG is there. I think the JTAG I put at the last. I don't know. Yeah, but it is. I've done it and I've uploaded the PPT, I guess. It is included. Because that which comes along with your LPC 1768. Anyway, I'll add it in the course plan in your teams.
Okay, ma'am.
Anything else?
We have a quiz, right?
No, today I have not scheduled any quiz because I was on leave for 2 days. So,
okay, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll stop here. Actually, if you do it something in the lab with this execution and all, you'll understand better. You can see the changes, how it can have a change, and how the various execution can take place with respect to the different scheduling and those things. Then it becomes interesting. Otherwise, it will be monotonous. I just gave it, right? And moreover, I told you to work on the free RTOS. Those who are interested, you can try out whatever the simple task execution, etc., etc. It's not mandatory, but it is of your interest. Maybe how to make use of the Visual Basic for the front end. The steps given, which was done by some student last year. If you want, I'll upload it in the Teams. Yeah, we'll leave. And anything?
No, ma'am.
Yeah.